Welcome, everybody.
How's it going, Pablo?
It's going great. It's going great. How you doing, Wes?
I'm hot.
Wow.
It's 91 degrees here in Southern California.
Yeah, but we're in air conditioning.
Yeah, but I mean, I just wanted the people to get a flavor of the context.
Got it.
Okay.
It is hot, but I'm sure it's
We're
not
fine.
humid. We're fine.
We're fine.
We're fine. We're in collared shirts.
We're
we
in
got a tie
California.
on. How hot is it? All right, let's get going. What's today's topic, sir?
Well,
Or how did it come about?
funny enough, we have a topic called Mentorship Matters. And this was suggested to us by a podcast that we sometimes listen to called Couples Therapy. And it's by Candace and Casey Neistat. Casey Neistat, the famous YouTube blogger, and his wife have a podcast where they talk about their relationship. And in this episode, the most recent one called Obligation Station, they actually start by talking about the relationship with school and with being connected and not being connected. And there's kind of a poignant passage where, and we're going to play it later, a bit of it, where they talk about whether you had a mentor or not, or being connected to somebody who invested in you.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Well, I thought your
Go
definition was good to share. Like, just defining what mentorship means.
No, but I thought, or it was the non-definition of what it is. No, in the reality, if we think about mentorship isn't always what we maybe think it is, like supporting, helping students. But then if you say those words as I say them out loud, it can be through academia or just through school. It doesn't have to be extracurricular, I guess is my thought, that you can mentor students while they're actually in school.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be after hours or in between periods or at lunch or recess. I think you can mentor students on the fly or on the job. I think that's where it kind of maybe gets skewed for folks. Like, it's an extra thing. It's not. It's all part of one of the many hats, especially you as new teachers.
Yeah.
I think mentorship should be part of your everyday routine.
Yeah, so let me just clarify or add this twist on it, because I like that idea that it happens in the course of the school day.
Yeah.
But for me, mentorship takes on some dimension beyond just academics. Like it can happen in the English lesson, but it's like students who are watching you and they're picking up how you handle conflict, or they're picking up how you use humor. And in some, you don't end up really mentoring all your students the way we're going to talk about today. These are kind of like special ties or special bonds that are developed. And it's helpful, I think, and we're going to talk about being intentional, if you intend to do this and you're aware of it. And we're going to talk about some of the struggles of how do you find time for that? How do you remain aware and cognizant of these opportunities instead of just getting lost in the day-to-day shuffle of teaching? But mentorship matters. And
it does, but I just want to not push back, I guess just add on to what you were saying.
Add on via pushing back.
Yeah, no. I think you can utilize I'm making this up, the mentorship blanket, in a sense, and that means meaning a mentor for all. I think you can.
The mentorship mantle.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. But I think you can carry that flag and at least support everybody in a general sense, right? And I think that's just by you caring about everybody. There's different levels, I guess, of mentorship is all I'm trying to say.
But I think most teachers are aware that they're serving as a role model just by nature of being up in front and facilitating what you're going to do with your time.
I think easier said than done, though. Like, the school year starts, and then some of the things go out the window. I want to be perfect. I want to do this, and then, like, the school year starts, and, oh, my gosh, I didn't make these copies, or I have to grade that test, or, I have to meet with a lot of things happen for new teachers.
Absolutely.
So, we'll just let's keep it going, Wes.
A moment to keep you mindful of that mentorship matters. All right, so we're going to talk about, just really quickly, memories of either being mentored or a special connection with when we were students, or even if we had some sort of opportunity to provide mentorship for younger students or anybody like that. I know that for me, what comes to mind first was my 6th grade teacher, and I know I probably talked about this on the podcast before. Mr. Sims, my first male teacher and only male teacher up till I got to high school, He was sarcastic. He was funny. He treated us like adults. He required us to think critically. But he had a system where there was the opportunity to go to lunch with him at a local like pizza parlor slash arcade. And so that mentorship, like, it only happened a few times. I mean, he couldn't take the whole class every time.
Sure. Yeah.
But I just remember going into, it was called PJ's Pizzazz, and it was this video game arcade, and pizza parlor in West Covina where I went to school. And just the fact that he took time that you knew he did not have to give, because he did coach sports and he was my softball coach, and but this was beyond. This was him saying, hey, you and you, we're going to lunch and we're going to hang out, have some pizza and talk. And I don't remember what the conversation was. All I remembered was that he set aside time for me and another student. So that was one example. And it, I'm blah, blah, blah years old, and I can still remember that,
Yeah.
Made an impression.
I know what's coming. You're going to say Pablo, and I'm going, if you've listened to the podcast at all, anyways, zero mentorship that I can remember.
Outside of school?
No, when I'm saying zero mentorship, I'm talking about elementary.
Okay.
High school, we always go back to my high school coach. Biggest basketball coach. Yeah. Biggest mentor I've ever had, at any level. But we don't need to go down that road. But yeah, I'm trying to think outside of school. I was a latchkey kid, so.
But I think just returning to that emphasizes to people who are listening, there are students out there who they're just waiting for somebody to take an interest in.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, just by virtue of my family or my parents working really hard, that was mentorship. Not enough, but but that's later. As a kid, you're not realizing that's mentorship. No, they're working hard. I'm doing what I can for the family, but who's gonna help me out? I'm just 10.
Right. I'm 10. I don't get what those jobs are about yet.
I make a heck of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, though. And
That's good. That's good. All right. So let's think about ourselves as teachers. What do you remember in terms of, and maybe this is more difficult because sometimes you don't know the impact you had as a teacher, but what comes to mind when you think of you as a teacher providing mentorship? What does that look like?
I think initially it was like an open door policy for anybody to come and talk about, but initially it was like about their homework, right? Or about work.
Sure.
But I did pull out games and things of that nature. And again, they were the honey to draw them in to, again, get work done that they didn't finish. But I didn't emphasize it when they got there that that's what they had to do, because it was their free time as well. Like if they're on recess or they're on lunch, I had schools of kids that would just come and play games. And you know what? That's their time. I was there. We chatted about sports. We chatted about their interests. So it was intentional, but I don't think it was 100%, supported by my thought of mentorship as it is today, as far as that part goes.
Yeah.
And then I'll talk a little bit about inside the classroom in a little bit. But.
Yeah, I think that's great having the open door policy. I mean, just a space for it to happen, to allow students to connect with you. It was interesting, like one of the things as an English teacher I did sometimes that would allow that door to open was I had students writing journals and I would read, and that provides information that you can't get in a face-to-face environment. I could look through 30 journals or 180 if my memory serves me right, and get tidbits and little glimpses into students that I could also then spark a conversation with face-to-face. But it's very difficult on the daily to go around the room. We're all going to share something personal. So journals for me was a habit that I could use to leverage to develop mentorship opportunities.
Yeah, and on the same, I forget. I think back to my start of the school year kind of routine, and that was to capture as much information from students. So it wasn't journaling, but what I could do, and the idea was like, what do you do with your free time? So I could have conversations every now and then. I just go to the spreadsheet. oh, they're having a bad day. What can I talk to you about?
That's cool.
And it's very simple. Like if they're, in ballet, you just talk about that ballet or whatever the case may be. It was simple, but yet very powerful.
And I appreciate you had a proactive plan. If I have this information, I see somebody having a bad day, I have a go-to where I don't have to go, hey, you look like you're miserable. Let's talk about your misery.
Right.
It was a way to reach in and make a connection with something that was positive, which could have, that sort of, that, I already said positive, benefit of lifting them, out of their funk or their sadness or what have you. Over time, students know, they sense, they trust that you're somebody who is looking out for them, and then they can open up to you.
Absolutely.
And have those deeper conversations. Yeah. I was trying to think of if there was I guess what comes to mind in terms of mentorship are the times I spent outside the classroom. And that was coaching speech, coaching academic decathlon, where you go to competitions, you're on a bus, it's a long ride, and you just strike up these informal conversations with students. And that time, we talked about this at our management retreat, about the time required to be invested to develop trust. And for a lot of students, you can't do it in a class period, a day after day after day after day. They just simply require more. So these experiences, going on trips with kids to these competitions, kids, they're in their mid-30s now. So with these students, that was time invested.
Yeah.
And I could have been ignoring them or turned away, but just spending the time on the bus talking afforded me opportunities to develop a relationship that could lead to something.
But what's super cool is you do have intentional time. I know it's basically the time that we have in school is for academia for the most part, but you have an intentional 180 days to make mentorship, connections, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I try to do with my junior high school kids is I did, a few years back do 20% time or genius time, but the idea wasn't just to offer them that and just go follow your interest. It was an opportunity for me to actually dive deeper into their interest and ask a lot of questions as they were doing it. And I saw a lot of super valuable and impressive just research by young kids, because they were super interested. And that in turn got me interested. And we just had a deeper relationship because I was supporting what they love to do.
Yeah, I love the fact that you could use Passion Project or Genius Hour to open up opportunities for mentorship. And that's something in our district that we've talked about, not just talked about, but we've executed, is that we have students working on passion projects for the Passion Conference, and we had mentors who were emailing students and asking about their academics, but they were also looking at their strengths assessment and writing them about their strengths. And then when the Passion Project or conference came along, then we got to the point where we were, sophisticated is maybe an overstatement, but we were trying to match mentors with similar interests as the students. So when they say, hey, you want to do this project on playing the guitar, we'll have a teacher who's into music, and they can email you and talk about some things at a deeper level. So it's actually not just kind of an adult mentor, but it's a subject-specific or passion-specific mentorship.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool. Well, I think we have an audio clip from the Candace and Casey podcast.
From our inspiration that we had for the show. So let's hear what this sounds like Casey had to say.
Yeah, and this is about his experience in high school.
Recollection of high school, what high school felt like to me was largely being dismissed by frustrated teachers who now, as an old, wise, mature adult, I don't fault. When you've got a kid who is sort of a huge pain in the ass like I was, I totally empathize with the teachers who just were like, screw this kid, I don't want to deal with him. But I remember what that felt like for me. And then on the other side, I remember the few teachers, like Dr. Gabordi, Lou Gabordi at Ledyard High School. I remember the ones who went the extra distance to show me that they cared and how impactful that was.
Yeah. So that's it. I mean, Casey was in high school for 2 years, which is a short amount of time to be in high school, and he remembers somebody reaching out. It's using his words, as a pain in the ass as he was, but he still felt a connection with somebody who cared, who took a moment to care about him.
And I think literally it was like a moment or a minute later in the podcast, he kind of describes a little bit more in depth. And he said, literally, he just took a minute to ask me these questions. And it wasn't a huge sustained program. It was a simple interest in him. So, I think our next step is we're going to talk about some ideas that we have, some recommendations we have, just to help create opportunities or openings for you to connect with or open yourself up to mentorship opportunities is maybe a way to talk about it.
Yeah, I think an easy one would be to just, I've said it before, be intentional. Calendar it. We talked a little bit in the last episode about time management and managing your time. Calendaring, like today I'm going to talk to Jose about XYZ.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
I think it's important. Like, even if Jose has been a pain in the ass, help him. It might just be that 1 or 2 minute talk, and you're intentional about it, and then you'll see where it goes from there. But that might be the tipping point. So just calendaring these things, and especially if you're in middle school or high school, I know you have a lot of students. It's even more important to probably do that.
Yeah.
Versus 30 kids on a daily basis that you can probably get through all those students multiple times. Yeah, calendar it. It's that simple. I mean, we want to start small.
It's a great tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing, since our audience may be a majority of new teachers, is you may not realize, and we're just here to share some of our experiences, you may not realize that the students who are a pain in the butt are often the most likely to come back and visit. And whether they develop a relationship with you that's functional, maybe it's always going to be dysfunctional, but my wife works at a continuation high school, and it's routine. The students she struggles with in every aspect of communicating and getting them to cooperate. They look at her because of her personality and her demeanor and the way she conducts herself. They look at her with some sort of as a positive adult, and they will come back and visit. But I'm just telling you, at the time, the students that seem like they're a pain, don't treat them like they're a pain. That's the absolute wrong road to go down. Treat everything like a positive path to the future. You want the best for them all the time. So investing and saying, hey, this student has caused me conflict and concern. I'm going to put it on my calendar to connect with them about something they're passionate about or interested in. I have another recommendation, which may at first seem like it doesn't really set you up for mentorship opportunities. But in my morning pages routine, which is I just do a simple kind of reflection in a journal in the morning, I write, I am grateful for, and then I fill in the blank with the name of somebody in my past. And so I find that doing this on a daily basis it reminds me of the people who have contributed something to me, and it makes me aware of those moments that come up, and just helps me be more ready, I think, to contribute to someone else, recognizing that I've had countless people pour into my life over the years.
That's good stuff. And I mean, I know we've said it, do it, because and I'm just thinking about myself, like, if I can't think of anybody, it doesn't mean it didn't happen, or it doesn't mean that a teacher didn't reach out. And there's, other circumstances that, I went to different schools over many different years. So that could be part of my, void in the knowledge of teachers trying to support me. Because I'm sure there's, like, Pablo, why aren't you doing this? Or Pablo, why aren't you doing that? I'm sure that was there. But nothing sticks out. So that's probably partly my fault, maybe partly part of the fault of the educator. But I think it's important to be there and be present. And don't get lost, because it's easy to get lost in the minutia or the day in, day out structure that schools really provide for us, unfortunately. But
and then just this came to me just now, another way to approach this is look at the teachers and the adults on campus who have strong relationships with students, and often students who maybe seem like it's surprising that they're connecting with adults because they struggle with communication or whatever, and study what are they doing. Ask them, like, how do you, like, for me, it was, I had a lot of athletes. The coach had a great relationship with the student, and I couldn't figure it out. So I would just talk to the coach, how's so-and-so doing? You know, any tips for me? And so finding out, studying up on the ways other adults connected with students, that's a resource that everyone has at their site. There's always somebody out there who's working on these mentorship opportunities, because largely that's why we get into this field, is to make an impact and to connect with people.
I didn't go to school for 5 years after high school. I went and worked, and maybe that was all for the better. I learned to be resilient. I learned social skills.
Yeah.
Something I probably could have learned from a mentor.
Yeah.
And again, maybe just the time wasn't right for it, but yeah, it took a minute to get back to schooling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to close here with our social media shout out.
Yeah.
And that is to Candace and Casey Neistat for what they contributed on that episode of Couples Therapy Podcast.
Yeah,
Check it out.
And an inspiration to talk about what we talked about today.
Yeah. It gave us a great launch pad for today.
Mentoring matters.
Yeah.
All right. Is that going to do it? That's it?
If you have time, go to iTunes, give us a 5-star rating, and leave us a review with some words of feedback. We value that a lot, and we appreciate you.
All right. That's it. We'll see you next time.
Connect with us on social media at Pablo and Wes. On Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, and all the podcast places on the web like
iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Overcast.
And remember to get your free special gift at
PabloandWes.com/gift. Yay!